Thank you for joining us. You're listening to the Beyond 50 radio program. I'm Daniel Davis. Joining us here on the program today is our guest who has had what I would call a very unique experience. As a matter of fact, I think that if anybody was ever to talk about the particular experience we're going to share with you today, you might think that maybe people are just one-off. What had happened is her husband had passed away suddenly, and she found herself in deep mourning, and the next thing you know, this husband and the other side begins to contact her, and they begin to rebuild, I guess, if you will, their relationship all over again. It wasn't just a mental situation, it was also as well, it was physical. It was actually a marvelous story as well when you go in between these pages to find out what life is possibly like after death. Joining us here on the Beyond 50 radio program is our guest and author of the book, Love from Both Sides. And I'd like to welcome to the program, Stephanie Risley. And Stephanie, thank you for joining us here on the program today.
My pleasure.
You bet. Now, tell us about this. What happened here?
Well, what happened to me is not unusual, believe it or not, because since I have written this book, I have gotten emails and calls from people all over. But what happened to me specifically was my husband died in my arms. I had my hand on his heart, so I felt his heart stop, and I was so shocked because he was such a gigantic, strong man that I felt this energy just whoosh through me, and then behind me, I heard a voice saying, free at last, thank God Almighty, I'm free at last. Now, he did not like being sick. He'd had leukemia. So,
okay.
So luckily for me, I just thought I was going crazy right that moment, but then I was in physical shock because the man that I loved was dead in front of me. Luckily for me, in the same hospital room stood my 28-year-old, no-nonsense, studio executive stepson, Sam, and he actually said that his dad came into him and said, Sam, this is wild. I'm dead, but I'm really not dead. Far out. So,
got the surfer's lingo down there at least.
Well, no, he was an old hippie. He was a Mendocino grower, actually, before he became a lawyer. And since he can't be, disbarred now, we can talk about it. He got the big disbarment.
There's a certain safety to being on the other side now.
yeah, you can do what you want, and you can say what you want. And the other side is actually not unusual. It's like we we were right now in India, people go back and forth. They believe in reincarnation. They know that the soul does not die when our bodies die. And even if you go back to, the foundation of the Judeo-Christian stuff, really, what are we based on? We are based on a belief that souls don't die. Now, the fact that people can come back and have sex with you, on the other hand, that's pretty unusual.
Oh, yeah. I keep remembering that. Yeah, I keep remembering that movie, The Entity. I don't know if you remember that one, starring Barbara Hershey, where, in fact, she proclaims this was based on a true story, that she was raped by an entity, and they just could never solve this mystery here. And then, in your book, you talk about actually having a physical relationship with a dead husband on the other side, and so people kind of start scratching their head. How is that possible?
That's so interesting. I went to high school with Barbara Hershey. It's Barbara Hershbein then, but anyway, that kind of reporting has happened throughout time. Actually, in the Middle Ages, there were a group of nuns who believed that the Archangel Michael was coming to them and raping them. So, hello. This is not unusual in terms of, I didn't see that Barbara Hershey movie, but the movie I really love, which kind of physicalizes what happened between my husband and myself, is an English movie called Truly, Madly, Deeply, where Alan Rickman, who plays an impossible musician, has died, and he's left his lover, who's played by Juliet Stevenson, just bereft. I mean, all she can do is cry, and that was the space I was in. And finally, he feels, she's sitting there one day, and she's just, missing him. And if anybody has lost a husband or a loved one, they know the feeling of, like, you cannot even understand how you can be alive and be in this much pain. Mm-hmm. And she's sitting there playing the piano, and suddenly, there's Jamie, her lover, just playing the cello next to her. And she doesn't care why, she doesn't care. She just knows that he's there. And that was, for me, after my husband died, that night I was like brain. You feel as if your brain has become mush, but unfortunately your body is still working. So the fact that I could get into a car and drive myself home, and then I just screamed. I screamed for like 5 hours, and then I just fell asleep. It was like 3 in the morning. I couldn't believe that this had happened, but of course it had. I mean, people die all the time. I knew that. I'd had people die before. But then I heard somebody like slap me upside the head at 6 in the morning, and I heard very clearly, "Get out of bed. Get up now." And I went outside. Go outside, and I turned my head to the east, and I saw this magnificent sunrise, and I could tell that something wanted me out there, and I heard once again this disembodied voice saying, "You will survive, you will go on." And I'm thinking to myself, great, this is not good news.
Right.
But see, the thing about the book that I think readers find so fascinating is that you actually witness the transformation of two people. One of them is alive, one of them is dead, and they're both kind of noodling what their experiences meant in this lifetime. Why did we meet as when we met? Because my husband asked me to marry him on the 4th date. I mean, how many girls have had this happen to them? And I was 42. So that was something new in my life. Nobody had ever done that. Nobody had ever asked me to marry them, period. Mm-hmm. So, and by 42, you're like scratching your head going, gee whiz, what's wrong with me? But in point of fact, we were destined to meet much earlier than that. We were actually programmed to meet when we lived around the corner from each other in 1970 in Berkeley. And what was weird is that I would walk down this particular street called Ellsworth, and every time I would pass a corner named Parker, I would hear in my head, which was horrible at the time, I would hear Barbra Streisand singing to me, "I'm Sadie, Sadie, married lady." Well, this is in 1970 when to be married was like the worst thing you could possibly do. Nobody wanted to be married. And so, and I thought to myself, I'm going crazy. But what had happened was I had just passed the man who was supposed to be my guy. Mm-hmm. And so people have those kinds of awarenesses all the time.
Mm-hmm. Now, as you read love from both sides, what I found striking were a couple of things. The first thing is that Dan, your husband, would refer to himself as Dan the man. And being that my name is Daniel, the short name is Dan, and I hear that a lot. And at first I thought, now this is weird, just on that merit alone. But that he had trouble in the beginning trying to reach out and contact you, but even further still, what I found fascinating were what you might call philosophical values about how we live our lives, and then, once he's dead, he's coming back saying, I don't feel that I gave my all in this life, and as a result that you actually restrained as well, even though you loved each other. And I thought, so what does it mean that now once he is passed, that we live our lives not fully engaged in them, and knowing that, as the listeners may listen to this, what then did Dan suggest we do where we can do that?
Okay, let me untangle that question.
Because I'm still tangled up just going back and remembering that one.
Yeah, okay. What Dan did, the reason our our marriage, our life together was so problematic was because Dan was not focused in the gloriousness of being Dan. He didn't realize that being him was all he needed to be. He thought that he needed to be somebody different. I mean, actually, he would wander around the house singing a song called "The Great Pretender," and I would say, Dan, what are you pretending? I mean, give us a break here, you know. But in point of fact, he thought he made the choices in his life so that people would think he was something other than what he was. He was wonderful. I mean, he was an extraordinary man. But he didn't appreciate who he was enough. He didn't think it was enough. And in point of fact, if he could come back and tell everybody that you are perfect the way you are, and you're here to experience who you are in every aspect of who you are, that's the joy of it. That's and fighting for who you are, because you don't know who you are until you're faced with challenges and overcoming them. And he made lots of decisions so that people would think he was hip, he was cool. The woman he married, I mean, when he passed me, I wasn't a hippy-dippy person in Berkeley at all. Because I had lupus and I had to wear hats, instead of dressing in the uniform of the jeans and no bra and whatever, I have tits, so I needed to wear a bra, and I wore little short skirts and a hat and Capizio dance shoes. I really looked like a little lunatic walking to school. And so I look back on that and I go, Jesus God. And I didn't look hip enough for him. He was 7 years older than I was, and he wanted an Earth mother. So he actually connected with a woman who was, I guess, 5 years older than he was, very beautiful, but she had already been married 4 times or 3 times, and she'd had 3 children, and she was wild. And so that attracted him more. And in point of fact, she was an old enemy. So we are just as attracted to old friends as we are to old enemies. And as he says, I went and I danced that dance and I didn't learn anything new. Mm-hmm. So back to your question of what can we learn here is to be as authentic and connected to your emotions, and in terms of analyzing what it is that you need to do here to experience yourself and connect with your purpose. I mean, everybody has different purposes, and our purpose, as he says in the book, a part of our purpose was to connect to each other and to love one another. And when in the brief moments in time, and considering there were 12 years that we had, the time when he would let us, really love each other. I mean, he'd turn around and he goes, "Why don't we do this more often?" I'd go, "Hello, beats me. I'm here." I'm here for you, baby. Mm-hmm. and that's what he laments. He laments all the times where it's Sunday and I'm going, "Honey, here," and I look good naked. I'm 62. I still look good naked. Mm-hmm. And I would be standing in front of the damn TV with the football game, basketball game on, whatever, those tiny little men chasing balls across the screen. And I'd just stand there, and I would do this slow strip, and he'd just, out of fun, he'd, push me aside. Mm-hmm. But that's, the girls are so much more sexual than men. And we are encoded that way. And we keep the species going. I mean, you guys are off hunting and, whatever, and we'll pull you back. I know you are, and he's going, "Is that so?" You want me to explain the physiology of that one to you?
Absolutely, why not?
Okay. All right.
So I can tell that actually the communication with your husband as he got back in touch with you has made you very bold, it sounds like.
Well,
but that was already there, just lying sort of dormant a little bit.
I don't know if it was, but I am... the gods push you into different places, and right when Dan was dying, he had just done a dissolution of partnership for this crazy little company, of hypnosis. And because I had 4 years of working for the Neuropsychiatric Institute here in Los Angeles as an interviewer and a researcher, and I'd had 8 years of psychotherapy myself, 6 years of Jungian dream research, my husband handed me this little paper and said, "Sweetie, why don't you go and take because these people sent him an email saying that they were doing a hypnotherapy training. He said, "Sweetie, why don't you go and do this training?" And so I started working for this company of hypnotherapy in December 18th, 2001, just for something to do. And on December 26th, 2001, my husband died. But I was working as a hypnotherapist, and so now I've had 7 years of being a full-time therapist. And because I'm a full-time therapist, that means I'm a healer, and because I've done my own past life regressions with Brian Weiss, I know that I have so many lives as a healer. So the gods pushed me into this place. And because I listen to so many stories of sorrow and dysfunction, a lot of them come from sexual wounds. And it's a very essential place to begin healing with everybody. I mean, I help people lose weight and stop smoking, but actually I help people get in touch with their core selves and really have a good time. But because I have been working for these 7 years, I now have a very different perspective on all kinds of things, and I do nothing but read brain research, and that's why I was going to be telling you about why girls are more sexual than men, if you'd like to hear it.
Absolutely. It's such an interesting story when you think, too, that people would say, well, now, how did you actually have a physical relationship with somebody who has passed? And I'm sure that the questions come, what does that feel like? What is the experience like?
Okay, well, you know what? I can kind of dovetail these two things into one another. Okay, and I'll do one thing at a time. Okay, think about think of us as a species. Okay, there is 1 million years behind us to walk to this particular part of being a Homo sapien. On that march toward being us, women have had to get pregnant, right? And get pregnant by males who come at us with a force. Okay. Now, once you're looking at a stiff dick coming at you, and you're thinking, oh my God, if that thing gets near me, I could die because I'm going to have to give birth to a gigantic thing that has a big head. And most females died in childbirth. So what happened in our evolutionary brain is that when we have an orgasm, females, when we have an orgasm, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 parts of our brain open up, flooding our brain with oxytocin, which is a precursor for dopamine and serotonin, and the serotonin is what I ask the clients to raise to lose weight. But the reason that I know about this research is that at the University of Wisconsin, where they have a lot of darling undergraduate girls who actually can manage to have orgasms, how they do this, without any kind of physical manipulation. They're just in their brains, okay, and they have an orgasm. Now, okay, so that's doable, that's possible. With what happens when you're connected to the other side, this energy, and if you're having really good sex with somebody who you love, it's like you're getting this energy jolt from the in-between anyway. When the two of you are working together, there's this fabulous energy that's happening, that you're getting it, and you're feeling that you are both connected to the in-between. So when Dan would come back to me, he would just say, lie back, baby. And I would just lie back, and it was like I had somebody giving me a tantric massage from within. Mm-hmm. And just this major love that would just envelop me. It was so strong, and it was so tangible. And I am not alone. A year after, to the day after my husband died, another absolutely impossible husband in my community died. He was the husband of a friend, Gene, and about, maybe a month or so after he died, I looked at her and I said, "So, Gene, has he come back and had sex with you yet?" And he said, "All the time. How did you know?" I said, "Because that's what they do." She said, "And he's bossing me around like crazy. He doesn't want me to get my hair cut." I said, "Honey, go get your hair cut. He's dead." I mean, and when a woman who'd been married for 50 years, Mila, who was gorgeous, and then her husband died, and I said, I sat down with her one day and I said, "So Mila, is he coming back to you all the time now?" And she turned away from me and she blushed. And she said, "Yes, but he is coming back so strong, like when he was young."
Ah.
So it's like wives, this is the secret that widows keep, is that their husbands, when they are connected sexually, the sexual bond is a very tight one, and it's a beautiful bond, and it's a sacred bond. I mean, I'm just listening to the great story of Eloise and Abelard on Teaching Company's CDs, and that's, when love is strong, it continues. Mm-hmm. So, and it does. And as I said, I have gotten emails from all over the world, from Scotland, from India, from South America, from Canada, just telling me of the same kind of connection.
I think it's really interesting, too, that as you read this book, Love from Both Sides, is the fact that you begin to eliminate a fear that I think a lot of us have is this all there is and what else? And that fear, for instance, of dying. So within that fear, a lot of people tend to just not live. And that if you can eliminate that altogether, you're in for that roller coaster ride, simply known as life, living out your particular authentic purpose, and that's very inspiring. Now, I know that in the book that Dan had encouraged you to write the book.
Oh, he'd insisted I write the book.
Okay.
I mean, that's all it says is write the book.
Mm-hmm. And what would now remind the audience, or me even, what was the reasons that he insisted you do that?
Because I had, because he had thwarted my own career path so cavalierly. I was when I met him, I was 42. I'd never been happier in my life. I had just won the Woman in Film Award. I was in film school. It had taken me a long time to get myself into that situation, and I had overcome, challenge after challenge after challenge. And life is like a big video game. The better you get at doing one challenge, they give you more challenges to do. So I had overcome a death-defying disease. I'd done this. I'd done that, and that was the thing that totally he was attracted to me for, was my what I would call my determined optimism. And then once we got married, he did everything to make it impossible for me to continue on that path. Everything he could. So because he said because he was so intimidated and jealous by my own enthusiasm. And then and he was essentially we all have different agreements coming in in the in-between. What Dan kept saying was, let's go back to death. There is no death, really. I mean, right now, we are in these bodies, and we're out on a learning opportunity excursion. If you have a body right now, you are spirit that is expressed in flesh. We are not bodies who have spirits. It's the other way around. Right, we are all spirits, and we all have certain agendas, certain purposes to do. Now, there's sort of like this is the way he could explain what is the unexplainable. which is because you can't really think about things. You don't have the power, the brain to think about. But if you were talking about the in-between, there are what would be called cluster groups, clusters of souls that have certain purposes and certain agendas. I'm in a teaching and healing cluster. That's the part of the cluster I'm in. So teaching involves writing, and I was a writer. And so I could have had a career doing screenplays that helped to elevate the consciousness, like Ghost maybe, or the wonderful I just saw Up. That's a beautiful movie. But anybody who's working there understands that they have a job. Well, my job now is the same, and it's just reaching the people who need to hear this particular way of looking at reality. And because I wasn't able to do it, he kind of got into trouble when he went back there, because he had totally betrayed an agreement that he had made. He'd actually asked for me in this lifetime, because we'd had a lifetime before where he'd sort of betrayed me. He'd done this a few times. So anybody, for those listening, look around the house right now. You are looking at the people that you have work to do with, that you have purposes to more or less fulfill. If it just may be fulfilling, hello, I need to love you more, I need to forgive you more, I need to help you, that kind of thing. And for Dan, we were committed to loving each other and to bringing in another couple of souls who needed us to be their parents. So the reason why I had to write the book was because he asked me to marry him on the fourth date and the proposal went, well, you really want to have a kid, don't you? And I said, I'm 42. It's too late for that. And he just looked at me and he said, no, it's not. Marry me. We'll do that. Now, fourth date, hadn't kissed him. I said, excuse me, I'm late for a rehearsal, but you stay right here. I haven't had an offer like this. You stay right here. I'm coming back to try out the merchandise. So that poor man. So we got married, but once I got pregnant, he really didn't want the baby. But the baby had been waiting for 20 years for us to get our act together so that we could be her parents. Mm-hmm. And so once that happened, that's when the shift comes. That's when when he starts to die, quite honestly, because he betrayed himself, he betrayed me on that level. And at that point, the All That Is made, and I said, this guy's out of the game. We're taking him out.
Oh, boy. I have to ask, because as you said, you've been receiving emails from people around the world, so obviously there is a pretty good reception of your book here. I have to ask you, you say it's pretty much all walks of life, it almost sounds like, as well, so it doesn't seem as crazy to a lot of people out there as, say, a mainstream consciousness would believe it is because of their actual experiences. Has it had people feel just encouraged?
Oh, absolutely. And people are so misinformed about what the mainstream consciousness is. Mm-hmm. I mean, everybody thinks that everybody else is mainstream and they're kind of airy-fairy. I mean, it's not so. I mean, regular religion is dead. People are walking away from the Catholic Church because the Catholic Church is based on something that can't possibly work. You cannot base a religion on original sin when original sin presupposes that sex is vile and dirty. I mean, how crazy is that?
Right.
It creates life. I mean, and what are the results? You have people trying to push down what is a absolutely natural, normal, fabulous part of being alive, and they push it down so that it's evil and filthy, and they wind up, trying to have sex with 12-year-old boys.
Right.
And then ruin everybody's lives. And it's only because they have misinterpreted sacred texts that were absolutely translated. I mean, I know way too much about this because I've read all of Elaine Pagel's. When I walked into Berkeley, 40 years ago, they said, "What do you want to study?" And I said, "I want to study comparative religion." And they said, "Well, we don't have that." I said, "Well, you should." So I had to study political science instead. But studying religions, when you go back to the basic, say go back to the goddess-worshipping religions, sex is not only revered, it is so sacred that there is, and every girl, there's a wonderful book by, her name is Corbet. I can't think of it right now, but it's called The Sacred Prostitute, and it is really about the goddess-worshipping religions of in the cradle of civilization in Sumeria, where a place where bombing, we used to bomb, Iraq, where you had a belief system that said that sex was the way, the means to get to the sacred, and that honoring a female's body was devotional, and so that you came to a temple as a male to give offerings to the sacred, to what was called the Vestal Virgins. They weren't virgins at all. They were girls, and all the girls had to take the training to how to please a man, how to worship a man. So it wasn't like, let me worship you. It's like, let us worship both people. I mean, if there are any married people out there, and just ask, what would your life look like if you looked at each other every day and said, how can I worship you as a man? And there's a wonderful ceremony called the Adoration of the Lingam, which every man, if you went down and read this, you'd go, yes, let's do this, baby. Let's do this now.
Put some excitement back in life as well.
Let me do this. Yeah, no, it's like, as I had been reading all this stuff when I was first married, and I have a very funny picture of Dan reading, because I gave him for our wedding gift, The Art of Sexual Ecstasy. I loved having sex. It's because it's fun, it's good, and it's a way of feeling good in your body, and it produces so many good hormones. Mm-hmm. And it keeps your brain going, which at 62, you want to keep it going.
You better believe it.
If I have to be in this body, it's got to be good, it's got to be healthy, it does yoga every day, and it walks every day. Mm-hmm. And that's my job for my body.
Again, like I said, at first when you read this title and then you begin to understand what it's about, you think to yourself, has this lady lost her mind here for a little bit? But then as you continue to read through, you start seeing things that just make sense after a while, and you think, no, this just isn't as nutty as it would seem at first. And then sometimes you start realizing as you're reading through the book, you begin to reflect on your own life and feel, boy, have I really fallen short, but I've still got time, at least I hope, to do something about it. And I'll bet you that's been one of the most consistent, inspiring messages that you've probably heard from readers.
Especially from men. I mean, there's a wonderful actor I go to yoga with. He's just adorable. His name is Julian Sands, to name drop. But when he read this book, he went, oh my God, this is so wonderful. This is so brilliant. It just made me switch my whole feeling in my marriage. He just went on and on about how much he loved it, and I loved him for that. But the men who write me are the ones who are so, more or less, they kind of gasp because they see in Dan, my husband, the exact same take on their own love, their own life that they have. And Dan, you are actually right. You have time to change now. Are you married? Do you have kids?
Yes.
Yes, so good. You'll go home and worship your wife.
I do every day, as a matter of fact.
That's good. That's why you're a happy man.
Obviously.
Yeah. So no, and the subtitle of the book, it's called Love from Both Sides. It's a true story of soul survival and sacred sexuality. Mm-hmm. And the fact that souls survive is, I said, not new at all. It is in almost every culture. Go back to the Egyptians. I mean, I'm a docent in LA County, and I toured the Egyptian exhibition, so I had to study all of the Egyptian way of keeping the soul in the body, the ba and the ka, and the difference between the two souls, and a very elaborate way of looking at souls. I also had to tour an African exhibition, so I studied all of the African stuff. I studied Chinese. I studied the Japanese. And so every belief system that you can say, that you can name, believes in the other side, the all that is, the whatever you want to call it. I mean, some people, the Christian stuff is called heaven, but that's, I think, such a kind of a kindergarten way of looking at things.
You know, it's funny you say that, because there were times, even as a kid, that I thought, this just doesn't make sense. We go from here up there.
Yeah, really. And heaven and the all that is. I mean, I date a physicist, or I did, and he had no problem with this belief system at all, because when you talk about physics, we're living in a very specific plane of reality, and it's like the Matrix. If you just reach out your hand, you're in the next plane. If you could, the all that is isn't up there, it's around you. Only we don't have the senses to see it, to taste it, to smell it. We're very limited by our own attachment to this reality because of the deficiency of our own senses. To give you an example, if we had eyes that were like bumblebees, we'd have these things that were 56 different ways of looking at things. If we had the nose of a dog, we'd be able to smell so many different things. I'd be able to know your age. If we had the tongue of a snake, I'd be able to tell how much moisture there was. So do you see what I'm saying?
Exactly.
We have very limited sense organs, so we can't really see. I'm standing in a beautiful room looking out my windows, and I know that there are billions of things going on around me, and the molecules that are hitting each other that I can't see. How am I talking to you? I mean, it's invisible. So it's this reality is amazing, only we can't really see all of our amazingness.
If we could, we sometimes probably would be a little stuck about what to do about it as well.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, it's hard enough, manipulating in this reality, and that's kind of why you have to stay focused. And a lot of people ask me, well, why did I want to give Dan up? Because it was at some point, at one point in the book, you'll see he says there's a chapter called Who the Hell is Enoch? And I'm sitting there because Dan has kind of really gotten very comfy with essentially coming and and talking to me all day long, and I'm asking him, well, what does he do in the in-between? And he's saying, well, there are meetings to go to, and I have to do this, and this. And I wish I'd actually ask him so many more questions. But he says, well, how about we have a date on Saturday night, just like we used to have. You'll light the fire, and I want you to get some champagne. You can have some champagne. I never drink alone. I go, oh, God, this is kind of getting weird. I don't. So, but I did. I sat down, and I was tired. I'd been working all day, and I lit the fire. And then he says, well, what's and I said, well, Dan, this is like really, he said, well, what's wrong? I said, well, this is making me crazy. I mean, to have you back but really not have you back, I mean, this is like really driving me nuts. And then he said something like, well, life is more, what does he say? He said, it's like he said, look, life's more multidimensional than even you suspected. I can enjoy the fire and be close to you and make up for some of the missed opportunities. The energy in your legs, hips, and stomach is indeed from me. It's focused. The music is too distracting. And so he asked me to go and take the music off, turn the music off. And he said, you are truly a kind soul. Not a good speller, but a kind soul. Dan, he used to make fun of me. I'm dyslexic. So, and then I say, are you still Dan? He said, well, to you I am. I am more than Dan. But my Dan-ness is very fresh, and I am still processing it. I'm processing our Dan and Stephanie-ness, meaning how we were as a couple, and trying to gain more clarity on my own determined resolve not to let you affect or change me, when it was precisely because I needed your energy, your enthusiasm, that I married you. Go figure. To make up is impossible, but to make it better is not. It's why you need to let me to continue to bug you about the book and your schedule. And then I'm thinking, oh, well, God, this is look. And I said, well, I just am feeling terrible. And then suddenly I felt something different. And suddenly my own oversoul came in. He said, I said, Dan, are you still there? He said, well, I'm here, but I'm just sad, and I'm afraid you're not going to give me another chance. And I'm thinking, well, and then I say, then I wrote, because this is all the book is actually my journal that I've just sort of gone through. I said, well, Dan, I never thought of marrying anybody but you. And then in the book I say, suddenly I felt my energy shift, and then my handwriting changed completely. It got fast, slanted, determined, and I felt a sharp rip of anger. My oversoul steps up to the plate here. And then there was this just rush of my handwriting totally changed. It says, there are no guarantees. The betrayal of our agreement was so profoundly dismaying to me that I didn't know what to do. I almost couldn't believe it. I had waited all those years for you to finally arrive, and then you come in with all that infantile behavior and attitude. We could have been sheer bliss together. We had the goods, Enoch. We had the goods. And I literally sat there staring, stunned, thinking, who the hell is Enoch? And then Dan came back. And he says, Enoch is Dan's oversoul, or that's my name here. Because he's part of an oversoul. You, Dan, are also part of an oversoul. We are all parts of oversouls. And then he continues, my Dan-ness is only a part of Enoch, yet Enoch is me. Your oversoul is boo, I can't get through any longer. And then, but my oversoul could. He said, no, but you, meaning me, Stephanie, get to continue on with this one, with meaning this life, without having to play wet nurse any longer. The sheer nerve. Well, now I'm mad. Enoch and I have been partners for a very long time. We usually come in as friends, but this time we decided, and that means up there or wherever, to be lovers. And I would be the girl, you. I'm not usually a girl. I'm usually a guy. That's why you like being a girl so much. You revel in your girlness. Anyway, then that chapter goes on to kind of explain the mechanics and the structure of the all that is. And why, I'll just read this because he said, your girlness you always have, but that's also why when you saw there were no girls playing drums in the Rose Parade marching band when I was 7, you were furious. You would show them. And that's why you drove a cab so easily. And well, I might add. See, my oversoul is very proud of me. I love that for him. Now you need to focus on you. And that's what the book ultimately is very transformative. It's a transformational journey because by the end of the book, you see one shattered person able to pick up the pieces and put herself back together. Mm-hmm. And I think that's another reason why it's interesting. And you watch, for the first time, I've never seen it anywhere else, you watch a soul, you're not omniscient up there. He's up there, he doesn't know what to do, he's really, he goes, what did I do that for? And you watch him as he makes choices, because he goes on and he literally chooses his next life. And then goes on to something very challenging. But let me focus on this. He says, but you need to focus on you. Let Enoch, meaning Dan, go off and lick his wounds. You loved him, helped him, and would have died for him. Actually, you almost did. The nerve of him letting you take those drugs, knowing he didn't want that baby. That baby, by the way, was furious. Still is, in a way. Other plans had to be made, but they didn't include you directly. Lily and Athena, and that would be my niece and my little next door neighbor, they're 13 and they're like peas in a pod and they're so cute. I had them last week together. Are both aspects of your daughters, but that doesn't make up for your not being a mother yourself. So that passage right there, I think, is interesting on so many levels because it shows you I have these two 13-year-olds in my life. They're connected to me peripherally, and they both came into different people around me. But when I get the two of them together, they are like, you can't stop these two kids from talking to each other. Mm-hmm. They're just fabulous together. They're little vampires right now because they're into Twilight, So cute. Back to what you said, mainstream. The mainstream is changing. We are a species that is moving into a different form of communication. We are moving into much more. I mean, we're right now probably at a certain point in the evolutionary stage of being a Homo sapien, but we are going to be moving into a species that can work more with our creative minds and communicate with our minds. And that's what I teach my clients. I mean, all of the the secret stuff, which I call kindergarten metaphysics, is valid, but you have to know what you're doing. I get my clients to really focus on the essences of what they want, and it's got to be in line with their purpose and the purpose of the species and the purpose of the planet. And right now, everybody, I think, is finally relieved that we got a guy in the White House who is that kind of man, is a man who has the best interest of everybody. Mm-hmm. The purpose. His purpose was to walk in and to kind of go, okay, enough of this nonsense. Let's get along. So there's just so much, there's so many opportunities every day for one single person to change what is. Mm-hmm. But you have to do it by focusing on where you are. You can't look at look at other people's lives because those lives aren't yours. Mm-hmm. A lot of people are always judging. They're always comparing their lives to other people's. When in point of fact, if somebody who's hearing this, and I don't know, who would be hearing this, but I think are you in Pittsburgh? Is that where you are?
No, actually broadcasting out of Portland, Oregon.
I love Portland, Oregon. What a beautiful place that is. Mm-hmm. It's magical there. But if you did Portland, there you are. It's the Mecca. If you just stand in Portland, Oregon, and appreciate how beautiful that place is, how gorgeous it is, and just smile at everybody you see, then you're doing your job as a human. That's all you have to do. And be happy. I mean, all the science, my background, once again, is from the Neuropsychiatric Institute, and I do nothing but read brain research books. And because of that, I'm sitting here with Evolve Your Brain, the science of changing your mind and changing your brain, and that, and thinking and changing the structure of your brain is now what they know you can do by focused intention. And it's exciting. But we're all these spiritual beings that can change the world by being happy. Mm-hmm. And if my book can make people who are now doubting that what they felt when somebody died coming back to them, and they're thinking that they're crazy, that's why I had to write the book. To let everybody know that this was my experience. After I became a hypnotherapist, and then I went to study with Brian Weiss, who, I don't know, do you know who Brian Weiss is?
The name rings a bell.
Well, he wrote Only Love Is Real and Messages from Masters, but he is a Yale-educated, Columbia-educated psychiatrist who ran Mount Sinai in Florida, I think. He was head of the psychiatric department until he started working with people with phobic disorders, and he would use hypnosis, which he found was a very therapeutic tool, to take them back to the origin of the phobia. And at one point, he had somebody go back to 3000 BC in Egypt when she was walled in, and that was the beginning of a transformation in him that allowed him to see that his thinking was so brain dead, that it was so limited, because he thought that science was the only way of looking at things. But it's like, when Galileo said, hello, the earth does not revolve, the sun does not revolve around the earth. The people, the regular people said, hello, you are a heretic, let's burn you at the stake, and what you're saying is wrong. He was, of course, right. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of what's going on now. I think we're all, the species is just shifting. It's shifting slowly. And what Dan says, he says, you're the beginning, you're part of the little army of ants that are kind of leading, are kind of changing the perception. I just have my little job to do. I mean, I know when I get a client, they come to me. I sometimes I don't know how they happen to find me, but they come, and as soon as they're in my office, I know that we have work to do. And once they understand it, they do the work. I always say, I don't know what your purpose is, but my job with you is to get you on the path. Because if you don't do your job, somebody else's job can't be done. We are a species that works in cooperation. It's why we are so successful.
Well, I certainly agree with that, and it's when you take a look at the book Love from Both Sides, you realize that it's not as conventional as pop psychology about everybody who seems to have the inside dope, if you will, about how we're supposed to behave and be as human beings here on the earth, but you begin to realize just that the thing to celebrate is our uniquenesses, and that how we use those unique gifts that each and every one of us have in a collective cooperation, and you can see that begins to heal a lot of things in many different ways. And I can see that you were able to heal your loss through this experience here. Do you still, are you and Dan still in contact with each other?
It's so interesting you would say that. No, I mean, to get rid of Dan, I literally, because he just wouldn't leave me alone, and that's the funny part of the book. I mean, it's like he just would attach himself, and he was such an energy drain that finally and they were saying, you've got to let go of this. And it was very hard for me to let go of him, because it was like going to the well to drink from this love. I could just lie down, and there he'd be, and it was a love blast. And I wasn't the only one getting this love blast. His son was getting this love blast, too. We were both getting this feeling of unbelievable love. Now, the deal is that, I mean, it's a drug, and I had to learn to get this for myself. So I literally, Dan and this is a payback life for us. We were nuns together. Dan and I used to joke, because we were both extraordinarily spiritual, but neither of us liked the religions that we were brought up in. Mm-hmm. And he was Jewish, and I was Episcopalian, and I became a Catholic because I liked the liturgy. So I liked that at 10. I did. I was totally. I want to be a nun. And so I decided I would be a nun at 10, a cloistered one too. But so we would joke that we were probably we were probably gay priests together in a past life. And then when he came back, he said, no, we weren't priests, we were nuns. And we were nuns in a life in, I think, the 1200s at Chartres. And I had to take him back to Chartres. And that's in the book. It's an American in Paris. Is and to ground him there, because we got this life, and he had to know that this relationship was paid off, because I had to move on.
Mm-hmm.
And when you said, and he, in the book, you see him saying, well, I've chosen my next life. I want to do something a little more challenging this time. Thinking, okay, great. He said, I want to do it like a Time for Drunken Horses, and that was a great movie about these kids in Afghanistan. But I thought, okay, great. And then when he gets reincarnated, he goes, I'm in Africa! And I'm thinking, oh my God, talk about challenge. But then he didn't make it in Africa for very long. And so the other day, it was his birthday, May 9th, and I could feel him. I had just been down to the Louise Hayes conference, the I Can Do It, where all the woo-woo world convened, and there was a wonderful channel. No, she's not a channel, she's a medium called Lisa Williams. I don't know if you know of her, but she's cute, she's English. And she was talking about how when the spirits want to get your attention, they throw pennies at you. And it was his birthday on the 9th, and suddenly everywhere I went, there were pennies all around, and I went, okay, I got it. Don't you think you can come back? Because when he does come, and he will whip in. He does whip in every so often, but the feeling is horrible for me because I long. It makes me long for that again, for that love, for that connection, and I don't want to do that. So I tell him to go on his way. I have too much to do. But I think he's kind of pleased that I finished the book, and I know he's proud of me, so that's good.
Well, certainly we want to thank you for joining us on the program to talk about your book, Love from Both Sides. It's certainly, during the course of this particular program, a lot for a person's mainstream mind to wrap around, but as you sit in it, you begin to realize that there are a lot of elements to this story that just make a lot of sense, and I certainly want to let you know how much I appreciate you taking the time to join us on the program today.
Well, Dan, I want to thank you for doing probably the best interview I have had because of your own intelligence and your own way of looking at this, and I so appreciate it. Well, so I'm going to listen to your radio show. This is great.
Let people know all about Beyond 50. It's amazing what we cover as far as programming, and it's funny because I was just saying to my wife, who's also the producer of the program as well, Joy, as I said, do you find it funny that we keep doing shows that seem to be anywhere from 3 to 9 months ahead of what mainstream is doing?
Yeah.
And I said, one of these days, somebody's going to discover what's been going on with us for the last 5 years and go, we need to really get you guys out there because it's just really amazing the stories we have. And again, sometimes when she put this book in front of me, I thought, oh, come on, you got to be kidding me. And then I started, again, reading through and thumbing through, and I thought, wait a minute, now there's something here that I think our listeners would really, truly enjoy, if nothing more, getting them to think about how they're actually stewarding their own lives as they are now. And again, Stephanie Risley, I'd like to thank you for being with us on the program today to talk about your book, Love from Both Sides.
I thank you so much, and have everybody go to Amazon and buy a copy so that then Amazon will recommend it to other people. I love Amazon.
Again, Stephanie Risley, thank you for joining us on the program today, and stay in tune with both sides.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Want to thank our guest today, Stephanie Risley, again. The book is Love from Both Sides, a true story of soul survival and sacred sexuality. Want to thank you, the listeners, for tuning in. You've been listening to the Beyond 50 radio program. Would also like to thank one of our following sponsors for helping make this program possible, VRT Laboratory. If you are suffering from hot flashes, foggy thinking, sudden weight gain, low libido, mood swings, and other effects of aging, ZRT Laboratory, the forerunner in hormone testing, is your first step toward ending troublesome symptoms. Simply visit ZRT Lab online at www.zrtlab.com to find out how their home collection kits can help detect and correct hidden hormone imbalances. Let testing be your guide to symptom relief and life-changing solutions that begin with you. Physician guidance is recommended. Thank you again for tuning in. You've been listening to the Beyond 50 radio program. Be sure to visit us at our website, beyond50radio.com. That's the number 50. And also be sure to visit us at our blog, find interesting information, a lot of multimedia for you to play with and explore. Great resources as well. Be sure to also sign up for our free weekly e-newsletter. Comes out by email, both locally and nationally as well. Thank you again for tuning in. I'm Daniel Davis, and remember, live your day past halfway.